together after lunch. Like to
I got 3 minutes.
thank staff and Catherine for pulling that delicious meal together.
Anybody up for a 25-minute nap real quick?
We are back. Patty,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you are up.
Okay. Everyone back from lunch? Excitement begins. Okay, these, I've got 4 years of fund balance up here, and the FY22 are audited financials. And as you can see, we ended the year at 59.7 million in fund balance, which was a $1.2 million increase over 21. However, I do have some words of caution on this. If you look, of that 59 million, 25, almost 26 million of this is restricted, meaning we can't touch it for general fund type activities. We've got our POW bill, which we notice is decreasing. Kevin's using some POW bill money. Oh, right here, POW bill money, right there. He is also using some stormwater fund balance on projects. But just that 26 million is restricted for other activities of this 59, almost 60. Then we've got our debt service that is committed to debt service that we've put back. That actually comes about if we have a budget year and we have extra, we've tended to, years in the past, put that money towards debt service. So I do believe with a board action, though, the board could say we don't want to use it for debt service, but right now it is committed to debt service. I'm going to skip that line. This is money that we've put back for the fire station. You can see that decrease this year because we appropriated fund balance for some equipment. And then subsequent years, that is how much we have in POs that roll over to this year. So we have to hold that money back because it's related to encumbrances. And then this number right here, the 20 million, that is a calculated amount, and it's 40% of general fund budget. So every single year, I know that number. I don't know it right now for 23, but we do, that's a calculated number that we have. Now, this capital projects number, you can see has decreased. That capital projects number is the number that we use once we know all these categories. That's kind of the extra amount that we've had. So you can see we had 11 million, we bumped that back up, and now we're at 6 million. Now, one thing to note with that 6 million, that was at the end of FY22. So we've appropriated fund balance 3 million for town hall, and we're getting ready to appropriate 900,000 for the Siegel land, for Rama Church for Kevin. So we've used some of that money already.
So 3 million minus whatever you've used with that's been needed for Rama.
3.9 minus 6 million. That's kind of what's in that
Okay.
kitty, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, right.
Okay. The next slide is where we talk about all our debt. So our debt payment, I already know for FY24 is going to be almost $5 million. And that's all our debt. At the end of 23, we're going to have about $34.8 million left that we owe. That's our debts outstanding. It's the $34,821,000. Okay? And these are all the different debts, the different, 2004 we refunded, 2008 we refunded, 2010. Here's the ones we just did in October, the 13s to 21. Here's some 16s, and here's the 20, which is that's kind of the one we just did. That's where all our transportation bond money is. And then here is the refunding of the lot.
They had a homecoming day for Nick Saban.
Cool.
So, any questions on that? Yes.
Purely hypothetical, because I don't think we could go, but if we wanted to refinance
Mistake
anything
there.
right now, what would be the possible
Refund anything?
refinance?
Once we refund something, you can't refinance it.
No, I'm trying to get an idea of what the current bond rate is right now. Because it looks like we have a really good
It's
percentage.
really good rate.
Yeah, do you know what, happen to know what that would be?
Interest rates have gone up. I'll
Yeah.
check and see what, my guess,
Three-ish?
3.5 to 4.
3.5? Thank you. That's all I need.
The next schedule is the budget calendar. This looks exactly like it did last year. Instead of changed 22 to 23, it changed a couple days. So on February 3rd, which is next Friday, we're going to send out packages to all the departments and to the contributions. Ada Jenkins, Rural Hill, you know, that group. On March 3rd, we expect to get those back. The manager, Jackie and I, Anthony, will meet with all the department directors. Typically, this April meeting is where we meet with the external agencies. I'm sorry.
Why are we mailing out contribution forms?
I really don't mail them, I think I email them. I say mail out, but
It
we
is
send
email.
them out. I email them to
So-
everybody.
No, I mean,
Part of our,
why are we sending out forms for people to ask for us for free money?
so there's a
Forms for
certain,
taxpayers.
so previous boards has directed, you remember I think we did a policy, or we wrote Emily may have to help me, but it was a little bit started maybe even before Emily's time, sort of how we were gonna handle the process. And as part of that, we would mail out saying, hey, to the ones that we already knew about, that were on the list, and if board members said, hey, add Anthony Roberts, whatever to it, nonprofit, then we would mail out to that group also, and we'd have laid out what we wanted back, you know, your financials, how you're using the money, things like that. But that was where a previous board directed us to move,
And if memory.
because it was kind of like, they were coming in like, you know, bullets, you know, here, there, and yonder.
And we have historically, the last year or two, at the request of the board, posted it on our website because we didn't just want the recurring folks to have an opportunity. It was the request that other nonprofits have an opportunity to be at least directed to where they could go get the information too.
So that whole thing came about because it looked like we were playing favorites because only certain people knew about it and then it wasn't advertised online.
Okay, so,
But as a nonprofit person, I do not think that we should be mailing them to specifics. I think people should have to go out and hunt their own grant money. Cause you already get a leg up with this process.
The other piece to that was that
You'd be okay with
they have to meet town criteria. If they do not meet town criteria, it is, they are responded back to with you don't meet town criteria.
So we will be more than happy if the board says, do not mail those out. Okay with us. We were just going on what sort of previous policy the board directed us to do. If you want us to just post it, and if they submit, great. If they don't submit, you know, we don't send a notice to them. That's perfectly
I do
fine.
think though people, I've had one person email me and say, hey, when's the information coming out? Because I don't want to miss the boat. And so I emailed her back and said, hey, it's coming out February 3rd. I kind of think people, I mean, I've done that for 15 years, I don't have to do it, but I do think people,
Have come to expect it.
they come to expect it.
well, that's the problem.
Well, they come to expect the letter.
That's the problem. They come to expect that they're gonna apply and get it, gonna apply and get it. There's 1,000 or so, 1,200 501c3s, nonprofits within the state. I mean, if they meet the criteria, they could, somebody from Wake County could meet our criteria and potentially get money from the town of Huntersville.
Assuming we approved it.
I mean, I haven't seen anybody not approve anything for a charity or nonprofit around here yet.
Arts and Science is
Not true.
ASC Carolina,
Carolina
Farm
Farm,
Trust, yeah,
those two we did.
Drummond Bugle, they didn't get any money.
Yeah, that's right.
they got rid of them.
Everything is well reviewed by this board. and
Should we
it takes
discount
more
anybody
votes.
who received ARPA funds? I mean, because we got an email
Absolutely.
of local organizations receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars of ARPA funds. So they shouldn't, I would contest it, they should not be allowed.
I would
And I-
assume that'd be part of y'all's
That would be part
decision.
of the discussion.
Yeah.
As if they put in a request, this board has every right to filter through those, weigh the pros and the cons, and say, oh, well, if you've gotten X amount of dollars from the county through ARPA funds, then we're not gonna support that this year.
that's this board's prerogative. Commissioner Munger, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just in general, I like the idea, like, to the point, she's been setting it up for 15 years. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
I think it is.
Well, it is broke. Sorry.
We disagree.
Mayor.
Yes,
Just to kind of remind a few people that 4 or 5 years ago, we were cutting back on the nonprofits to try to get it a more manageable figure until last year, and then it really jumped up there. And it's,
Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt you.
thank you. It seems like it's out of hand again. So we're gonna keep sending this paper out, like Stacy said, is some people are gonna get a upper hand on it and expect the money, and I just don't think it's right.
Can I speak from another job perspective on this, or is that crossing the line? Okay, so as somebody who is now employed temporarily by a place that receives the funding, and as somebody who is now out there actively trying to obtain grant money, I feel like the town is putting this on a silver platter for certain nonprofits and saying, here you go. And I don't think that that's fair. ARPA funding and stuff, you know, they send the general emails out and then you push them out to whoever. I think Patty's overworked herself over the years doing this, honestly, because I know I'm the one who shook it up with, well, I felt like prior we were playing favorites. Now we're playing favorites just at a bigger scope. So I think if we put it on our Facebook, our social media, we have 200 people apply, then that's it, but at least it's equitable.
Commissioner Munger.
Sure. I'm curious, Patty. When you send out these emails, do you send out an individually handcrafted email to this one, that one, or that one? Or is it a distribution list that has them all and says,
No, I
It's
send
open
them out,
season.
I send them out individually.
I think kind of.
I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3.
It's the agencies that you have either added to the list or the ones that they were doing 15 years ago.
I mean, it's 8 to 10.
Right,
And I mean, they have a memo that's addressed specifically to them.
okay,
They have a contract that's a draft
yeah.
that's specifically to them. And then they have the Excel worksheet that they would fill out and send back.
So my suggestion would be to pass them on middle ground. Stop doing it to individual, add them to a distribution list. If any specific nonprofit wants to be added to the distribution list, we send out an email saying, the doors are open, please apply now. If you want to pursue anything, and it has links or anything like that, but it's all generic, it's not specific to that nonprofit. I'm gonna get jumped on with.
No, you're not, no.
Kovacs is-
I was going to say, I know last year we did do a lot of funding for nonprofits, but when we got ARPA funds, we discussed as a board that we knew that was going to go towards nonprofits to help nonprofits that had really struggled during the pandemic. So I just wanted to point that out because I know what you're saying, Commissioner Boone. It was a lot last year, but we had also talked about that when we were moving ARPA funds around and where we would put it. But also with Commissioner Boone, him and I met with a local nonprofit, and when we were talking about grants and funding and stuff, that nonprofit that's been here, I forgot how many years, but they're not brand new, they had no idea that grant funds were out there or that we as a town were doing it. So to the effect of what Commissioner Phillips is saying, when we're sending out these emails to people that have done it in the past, we've got people literally right down the street that have no idea that this is something we do, so I do think it is a leg up.
So maybe it's something that you would want to consider is having something on the website that they could, that way it's available to everyone. And they have to initiate, it's not,
I feel like I put it on the website.
but it's not, okay, so if it's already there, then they should then be reaching out, asking what the process is.
Because we have 400 per the IRS. We have 402 nonprofits registered just in Huntersville.
Right, but I would also remind this board that we do have a policy that states what we can and what cannot fund. So if, for example, the Carolina Farm Trust, we said no to that. Why? Because it did not fit within, if, it was not something that the town could do on its own. That, we don't fund those. Loch Norman Pipe Band would be another one.
All I
Absolutely.
would say, Mayor, is if all 402 submit paperwork, and not that they would, and they go through, and Emily has to, a lot of times we got to follow up to find out what they even do. And do they even fit in the, I guess
The guidelines.
legally, what we could potentially fund? So that would, be research that she would have to do, and typically, you got to follow back up with them, especially the new ones that we haven't dealt with before, but we'll do whatever the board directs us to, how we open it up or not. Whether we send letters to the ones this year and, don't do it ever again, just give us some direction and we'll do whatever, but.
I think
Commissioner
if
Cook.
we're gonna send out an email, like, Kim was saying earlier, we have the email list, you can, if you wanna send out an email, send it to everyone that's on, not of nonprofits, just to the public in general. And they can let others know.
Because if they're not,
That's why I said, like, put it in an email to
I
everyone.
mean, I guess we could, and like I say, obviously, I'm probably the last person we need to ask of how to advertise this stuff, but we could push out a message, if that's what the board wants, on various channels, and put it on the website, basically saying, we are, whatever, we're accepting applications or whatever, I'm making up words here, for nonprofits, and it needs to be in by X date. Because if we leave it open, forever, then we,
Correct. I agree with that as well.
I'm imagining it the same way we put out an all call for people to apply for boards and stuff, I mean.
That's how, to just.
we just need maybe a drop dead date, maybe it's following this date up here when we,
If you look at, it needs to be treated like a grant, and like, that's how all the grant websites say, they say it opens X date, closes X date, awarded by X date. So if we do a public push out there, we might have people apply, who knows what kind of nuts are gonna apply, but at least we're being fair, and that's what it's supposed to be about. But we shouldn't be putting our staff in a situation where even by accident, it looks like they're playing favorites and we're playing favorites. I'm building my own cage right now, so.
so we got some extra money now, haven't we?
Anyone else want to weigh in on the process? I don't know that we have a definitive direction, so.
what am I doing?
Exactly.
Next Friday is the deadline. It's
So-
a heck of a thing to change this process. Year after, yes, open to it, but you're literally a
There
week
should have
away.
been direction last year, I think, to your point. Changing the process midstream probably throws people. But I do think that we could utilize our PIO and posting information out there and now, and start maybe creating the hybrid so that next year you were flipping over with hey, it's on the website,
It was on the
Thoughts?
website last year.
but we weren't promoting it.
I was.
I wasn't.
The community,
Well, of
well,
course you wouldn't be.
we weren't.
Some of those are very near and dear to me.
We're good either
How
way.
do we wanna do it? I'm good either way too, so,
We just want to make sure we're doing it right, whatever the board wants.
that's right. What do y'all want?
As is this year, next year, change the process.
Commissioner Partee, are you good with that?
I came late, so I'll let everybody make the decision. I'm sorry.
What do you mean as is, if I could ask?
She gets to send out the notification next Friday, because it is next
Just
Friday.
to those specific people?
Yeah, and then, it is already advertised widely on the website. I
And
have to imagine you're gonna put some sort of notification saying, we're open for applications now.
On the website?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get with Kim and Bobby and figure
Yeah,
out.
let Kim and Bobby will figure out how we push it out in that length of time for people to apply.
But I think what I also heard you say is that this would be the last year that we send these specific organizations.
Specific packets to specific organizations.
This will be the last.
I like the idea of a distribution list that all nonprofits that sign up get here's the application, here's the process, go.
But it's not due next week. It gets pushed out next week and then it's due in March. So we could change.
But there are a
It's
number of
simple
people that have already
communications.
reached out to her to say, when is that coming to me?
One person.
She can reply to him. We're not telling her not to do her job.
Okay. It was a suggestion. It's where I want to go. You can dispute it and go a different direction.
We're talking about you. Kim.
So is there a plan?
I thought there was a,
I mean, that's my suggestion. If you
this would be
don't
the
want it,
last year that
here
we
are better
send out
ones.
specific
yeah,
emails.
that's
then-
where I'm at.
24,
That's
I don't see why we need to send out specific emails though.
well, I'm not there either. I don't think we should, but I'm just trying to make a compromise here.
Because they're expecting it. It's
Well, then they can go to the website.
We can post it on,
I don't get it.
I don't think that we're connecting.
I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Munger say is create the bridge. Go ahead, push out the information off the website and through our social media presence, right? To everyone.
Sure.
But also still acknowledge that there are individuals that have already reached out and are expecting that email. So create this one time where there's this bridge that we're doing both. The next year, it's only an all-call push.
Yep.
And the email may be, the forms are right here online for you to get, have at it.
I mean, I can just email those folks back and say, hey, this year I'm not sending out packages, please go to our website.
And that
Absolutely.
works too.
That's it, yeah.
I mean,
And that
that's
works too.
super
But-
easy to do.
Like I
Are-
said, it was one suggestion.
I mean,
Chop
that
it
way
up,
they have
dice
to
it,
go out
do
there and
whatever you
print the
want.
forms
That was mine.
themselves.
I understand, and I appreciate that you came with a solution.
And I get it, I just, when you're talking to local nonprofits that are like, oh, I had no idea this happens, and then thinking about how other people are literally expecting it and waiting for the date, I wish there was that bridge.
Patty, online, does it list, is there a list that says these are, for lack of a better word, these are functions of the town that we outsource? I don't know how.
I mean, I would have to get with Emily if we wanted to put a paragraph saying, if we wanted to explain it to them then.
Because my only concern is you may have a nonprofit out there that thinks they can ask for, like the pipe ban or the farm trust. That would be a waste of your time and their time in trying to put together a request when this board would not give them funding because it did not meet the state guidelines.
We could do, I mean,
But I don't have the current policy in front of me at the moment. I feel confident that the policy says that the funds that we provide have to go to a nonprofit that is carrying out a public purpose that we would otherwise have state authority to carry out.
Right.
But again, I don't have the current policy in front of me. If we do decide to change the process, likely we would need to update the policy as well if it includes specific language about mailing out the forms, et cetera. So that's something that Jacob and I could work on in terms of editing the policy and getting it back before you. But there's no harm in Patty, if someone asks, directing them to our website rather than mailing out the packages.
And that's what I'm thinking. And then just putting the policy online for them to see.
Yes, we could post a link to the policy as well.
That's really all I'm asking, is that way they're not wasting their time. So is there consensus then? Putting it on the website, directing everyone to it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where we're headed.
Patty, you got that, right?
and I'll email the people that I normally deal with and say, hey, this year, please go to the website if you would like to request funding.
Right,
And
the
the forms
forms
are
will
there.
be there.
Okay.
And also, I believe that the application itself says something along the lines of that you do have to be carrying out.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
public purpose.
Yeah, she changed that, you changed that last year.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
she
thought-
outlined it
Okay,
really
so
nicely
the- so
last
that's
year.
already been done.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Good deal.
All right, we do have a meeting on April 3rd that I just put reserved in case we need it.
Okay,
April 17th is when we'll look again at the 5-year forecast and the major CIP. Then on the 1st is where Anthony presents his budget. During the month of May, we have budget meetings, ever how many we need. Public hearing on the 15th, and then adopt it on the June 5th. So that's the same. And then the last one, which, note bullet 4, is the town has received no additional information from the county assessor's office. So this is just a one slide update saying overall values 53, residential is 58%, commercial is 36. I think Jackie's got something after this that she was wanting to talk through.
Jack, can you help us by taking those dots off the bottom of the board? Will you erase those dots? The pink and the purple dot toward the bottom of the page.
How do I do that? Did I do it?
Bobby, if you'll pull up the spreadsheet, Happy Jackie's Good Time about spreadsheets, related to the revow. Let's spend a couple of minutes, as we transition into bonds, talking about the revaluation. Spreadsheet's my good time. I'll stay here and change every field in this spreadsheet as long as you'll tolerate it. If you have a home valued at $300,000, there are 4 elements of your tax bill. One of them is what you're paying in county tax. One of them is what you're paying in Huntersville tax. This spreadsheet is exclusively about the Huntersville tax. You all seem to chat this morning and resolve what you think you want to change the $126 fee to. I didn't have that information, so that's not on here. And there is also a solid waste fee from the county. So this spreadsheet does not account for county tax, county solid waste fee, or town solid waste fee. But today, right now, when we distribute this spreadsheet, if you'll put your current home value in cell C4, $300,000, it will calculate for you, cell C10, your current Huntersville tax rate. I challenge you. For several of you, I've tested it. I put your value in because your values are a matter of public record. It will absolutely calculate correctly what your current tax to Huntersville is. And it will come up with what's in C10, $720 if your value is $300,000. I'm asking you on this spreadsheet to make 3 assumptions. First, tell me what your current value is. Then tell me what your increase in value is. So the 3 yellow fields is what I want you to tell me. And we're all ballpark guessing what we think the tax rate might be in '24, in FY24 adopted rate. Anthony has chatted with many of you, and the question has come up, well, if the value increases X, why don't we just leave the tax rate the same at 24 cents? Bobby, if you'll change that cell to 24 cents. If your personal value went up 35%, and if the town does not change the rate and the rate stays at 24 cents, then your increase in annual tax to Huntersville will be $252. Monthly, that's the equivalent of $21. That ignored what the county might do. That ignored the solid waste fee for both the town and the county. That's why I think it's, I don't see us doing that. Is it possible? Sure, you make it 25, you make it 28, you go up as much as you want to. I just think it's illogical to think we might do that. I've got 3 disclaimers on the bottom I think are pretty important. The county talks to us about how much the value went up on average. I'm just assuming you need to look at it for yourself personally. I want to give you an example for me and Anthony just because I'll make it up and it'll be fun. First of all, this does not include the county tax. This is an individual property, and I'll explain to you why in just a second. Solid waste fees not included. So over in column H, you see how it says me, you, and average. So let's pretend Anthony and I today both live in a home in Huntersville valued at $300,000. And my value increased 10% and his increased 40%. That's an average of 25%. Okay, so Bobby, let's go back and change the new tax So let's do me first. My value increased 10%, so instead of 35, 10%. And let's assume we adopt a 22-cent tax rate.
Is that 20 cents?
Yep,
22.
22. Okay, let's go to 21 and a half.
Let's get zero.
Okay? If we're both 300,000 value today and I go up 10 and you adopt a 21.5-cent tax rate, I'm literally paying less next year. All right, now let's go to Anthony. Anthony's value is still 300,000. Let's make him a 40% increase in value. So his tax increase is $183. So if that's an average value increase of 25%. Average doesn't matter. What matters, you're impacting individual people. So even if it goes up an average of 25%, Anthony's far less happy with a 21.5-cent tax rate than I am. So let's speculate this for a while. Current value. Somebody throw out a value. I'm willing to make all these decisions. This is fun for me, but somebody spit out a value.
500.
Yeah.
And you saw what Patty said, regurgitated what Brad Fowler, the assistant assessor, told us in December, that the average increase in town was 53%. Somebody pick a average increase. I don't know what it's gonna be.
Go 53.
53.
Worst case scenario,
All
right?
right, so what do you wanna do here with tax rate? Sure, I'm assuming you don't wanna
Current
go.
tax rate's what?
Current tax rate's 24.
24? Hold on, let me look at my notes.
Go to 16.
16.
What?
If you want to see what a net zero looks like, that's what it looks like.
Think about it, math, because if you drop from 24 to 16, that's not quite half, and if it increased 53%, not just 50, somebody's still paying an additional $24.
Can you do the 24?
So a monthly increase of $53.
And we're gonna get, you're gonna see some of this in the 5-year financial forecast, what we're projecting, what we're sort of proposing to start out with. Obviously, we still got a lot more work to do from a standpoint of what are the operational costs that are going up there to plug in, but we can play with that.
So 53%, that is a total increase in value of 53% is what I interpreted, and they're not sure whether that's gonna land out there. And they said that, and that's why the letters haven't gone out yet. So Jackie's personal opinion, I'll be smart enough not to give it to you. I think it'll come down some from 53%, and even if it doesn't, they will estimate an appeals loss to us. So we're wise to not assume our value increase is gonna be 53%. So that's
So you
why,
would think it would be less than that?
I do, that's why we started out at 35.
35.
I'm not suggesting to you, I think it's gonna be 35, I'm just suggesting to you, I think it'll be something
Well,
appreciably less than
we're
53.
playing around with some numbers.
Yeah.
And you'll
Commissioner
see
Moore.
that in the overall spreadsheet in a little bit.
Yeah, Jackie, there's also one thing that always confuses the heck out of me, but you know it like the back of your hand. If we went that net zero revenue neutral
Revenue neutral.
and Mecklenburg County did not, there's an additional negative impact upon us. Is that correct?
Yes, for sales tax purposes, and it's not just the county, it would be the city of Charlotte and every other municipality, every other local government in North Carolina that participates in sales tax. So Davidson and Cornelius and Matthews, Mint Hill, Pineville, I don't think we'll feel the effect of Stallings because it's not material enough in the county, but it's there. But the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County make up something like 95, it's over 94% of the tax levy in the county. So what they do has a significant bearing on our sales tax distribution. So if the other 6 municipalities altogether make up 6%, their changes are gonna impact us, but it's not gonna be near as big as Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. Worth noting, when the economy was very questionable because of COVID in, say, March of 20, we dropped our estimate of how much sales tax we thought we'd receive. People didn't stop spending money, and so unpredicted by me, our sales tax distributions have increased every year. And so that would lead you to believe, why won't they just increase every year after that? Who in the room hadn't heard, OMG, the recession's coming, the recession's coming, would suggest people are gonna spend less. When people spend less, there's less sales tax to distribute. So, we're a little sensitive to, retail sales in the county.
So much of a surplus do we have? How much of a surplus do we have? Since we underestimated the sales tax, or do we have a surplus?
I do this better historically. We topped out at just, I'm gonna say in FY '19, we probably topped out at about 6 million in sales tax. And so for FY '21, we dropped the estimate to like 4.8, and that year we still brought in 6.5. And we've collected 5 months of sales tax so far this year. If we continue to collect for the next 7 months at the rate we have the previous 5 months, and that's a big if, right? Because everybody hears the recession's coming, and just your own pocketbook, aren't you trying to spend a little bit less? If we collect the next 7 at the rate we have the previous 5, which I don't predict, it'd be closer to 8 million.
Any other questions at this point?
I'm assuming you all would like for us to send this spreadsheet out. Play with it. It's my good time. Enjoy this with me.
I love it every year.
I do too.
I do, yeah, I know.
So, 350 and 25%, and,
I mean, so can we do one more? Let's just say it's the current value, your tax value is 260, right? And we'll go back to
your
the.
value, not the average value in the county, because we
Right.
have to look at you.
That's right. So, and then the value increase, let's just go back to the 35, if that's what you're guesstimating. And and then the tax rate gets reduced, let's just say to 21. See what that looks like. So,
You're still paying 113 more than you did last year to the town,
so
which is
less than $10 though a month.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Boone?
What if you put the Mecklenburg County tax rate in there just to show you what your entire tax bill was, or will be, and just not the Huntersville? Because the Mecklenburg County is a huge piece, much bigger than ours.
Absolutely, it's more than double ours.
So I would be interested in what my Mecklenburg County taxes would look like also.
Yeah. What is Mecklenburg County tax rate, is like 52?
No, that is
It's
60,
It's a 64 and a percentage.
Apologies. Yeah.
Is it 61?
I think
Patty,
it's
you got it on the
I think it's 61, 69.
Yeah, I think that's,
That
Not
sounds right.
Mecklenburg
It's-
County,
it's
no, I think-
exactly that number, I don't remember.
I think it's 61,
Well,
69.
you know, you can put a line out there and say Mecklenburg County 61, 69, and
Yeah, to do so, remember, it's hard to predict. That way, you get more variables. So however much your value increases for us, it'll increase for them. But what are we going to do with the tax rate, and what are they going to do with their tax rate?
we don't know that.
Right, which is why we didn't put it on here, because I don't have a feel for what the county might do.
all right. Anything else on this one at this moment? So
Enjoy.
this will get sent out. Yes, enjoy.
You know, all of this will be put online for everybody. All the slideshow, everything will be online. And we'll email all the slide. Now, it'll be a big document, so we'll probably have to do some link or whatever.
So you ready for lunch?
And, I'm sorry?
This is lunch.
No, we've done that already. We've done that already. We're not going anywhere.
All right, go back out again.
Bobby, we going back to, Anthony's trying to steal my thunder, we going back to the CIP?
I don't wanna hear this.
Kim pointed out this morning, we've done a little bit with our website. I fought pretty hard to keep on the finances webpage wording from the previous 2012 bond issue. There is a delicate balance between how specific you are in the bond question and how generic you are in the bond question. I believe that you have the two most recent times of bond questions. There have been 3 questions. One is what would you fund in transportation? What would you fund in parks and rec? What would you fund in public improvement? There's no magic to that. You could reword those questions any way you want to, and I'm confident we tweaked it some from 2003 to 2012. But here's what the bond question said. I would caution you, it would not be my recommendation that you say something as specific as say, to produce enough transportation bonds to create the Stumptown Road. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be as specific as Stumptown Road. In your auxiliary information that is not in the bond question, it is very typical for you to say, some projects might include, and I would recommend you list out the ones there from the CIP that you feel strongly about. I don't have any information that would lead me to believe there's anything smarter than those three categories. If you feel some strongly about different categories, by all means say so. This is how the bond questions were worded in 2012. Yes, sir.
So it is 3 different questions, 3 different things that.
Yes, and you could vote yes or no to either of the 3. And
Are we sure it's gonna be, well, are there 3 particular questions we're gonna have? I guess once we look at our sheet in a minute.
so, let me.
May only be 2.
Let me take the suspense away from another slide. You can discuss how many bond questions, you can discuss what the bond amount, the time to do that is right now. By May 15th, if we're gonna do it, we need to be solid. So start thinking right now, and if you know right now, yep, I'm cool with these 3 categories, certainly let us know.
Well, we
But-
gotta show them the projects. So when we show you the projects, because like Town Hall is not proposed to be a bond, so, we may only have 2 questions and maybe 3 questions. And a little bit, when we get deeper in the weeds, we may be able to categorize. But this wording is pretty standard, what you're gonna see in most towns you go. That's why y'all probably in 2012 picked this wording. It's really more of dollar amounts, and you may tweak this based on other towns and that you research, et cetera.
I'm ready for the next slide, please, Patty.
Oh, I'm controlling it now?
Oh, somebody.
Come on, Patty, that's not good. All right, now you gotta tell me which one, like that? Is that what you want?
So this is still in the thunder. Our bond council, far predating me, but for many years has been Parker Poe. We've asked them to produce for us a calendar of what would need to be done when. Everything you see in red is board action. Everything you see in black is staff action. So you need to take action as early as May 15th. That may sound crazy illogical to you, but when you start backing when absentee ballots have to be produced and what that wording needs to say, and the county's got to print those, when you start backing that calendar up, your first action, if we're going to do a bond referendum in November of '23, is May 15th. If something happens and you decide you're going to cancel a board meeting, that could impact that calendar.
You ready for that one?
I'm ready for this one. Yes, that's super. Huntersville can do anything they want to do. If voters approve debt, that debt can be issued absolutely anytime without question for 7 years. You don't have to issue the day after, you couldn't issue the day after voters approved debt, but you've got 7 years from the date the voters approved it to issue the debt. Huntersville went to the voters in 2003 and asked for $20 million in the 3 categories we just talked about. They were approved 77% in favor of the street bonds, 70 public improvement, 69 parks and rec in the 2003 referendum. In 2012, you see 68, 68, 66. You know, crazy people like to put on there the reference. You can go to the State Board of Elections website and vet that out. In 2003, voters approved issuing up to $20 million. I wasn't here, I can't explain it. We chose not to use $1 million worth of that. All that to say, just because voters approved $20 million don't mean it's guaranteed you're going to issue it. We went to the voters in 2012 and asked for authority to spend $30 million, and that was approved, and we did use all 30 of that. So you pick a number, and think about how long it has been since you got asked to approve debt from Mecklenburg County related to schools or anything else, or Huntersville. Is there magic to 9 or 10 years? No. Pick the right number of years. But I wouldn't go back to the voters every single year. So you can issue that debt anytime within 7 years. With almost not even given an excuse, the LGC can give you an extension for 3 years. So effectively, think of that as how much debt do I need to issue in the next 7 to 10? Now, if you go back to the voters in 3 to 5 years, that's okay, it's fine, but I encourage you to take a long-term view.
What's your next one?
When our financial advisor, Mitch Pergulio from Davenport was here in September, October. He gave a thorough presentation. They footnote like crazy too. This is an amazing, call it 100-page packet. It's important. I pick something I like off every single page. About the 12th page is the one that sticks out to me. So debt affordability, how much capacity do you have? Our financial advisors are incredibly bright. However, they're a little bit siloed, right? They're only talking to you about how much debt you can afford. They don't listen to Tolly's presentation about what might happen to fire employees, and they don't listen to Kevin's presentation about what might be happening with garbage. So don't take this as a guarantee you're only gonna, in the next 5 years, increase the tax rate, whatever row 30 or 32 says, because you gotta balance your budget every year individually. But if all you are looking at is whether or not you are gonna issue debt, how much could you afford to issue? So I'd say there's 4 cases here. They're awesome. They want to do more scenarios for us, and when they get information from the county, when we give them information from the county about what a penny on the tax rate generates now, these numbers will change. They're excited to do that work for us, and I'm excited to have it. However, absent any other information, I would say the rows that stick out to me on this spreadsheet are how much debt could you issue is row 13. 243 million, 95 million, 25 million, 57 million. And if you issued that amount of debt, what would be the impact of the tax rate? I'd say it's the bottom 2 rows with data M. It's row 30 and 32, which is, I would say, just spoiler alert again, if you're going to issue ballpark 100 million, which would be the column D, and you need to think about a eventual tax rate increase when all of the debt is issued in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 cents.
That does not take into account growth, correct? Growth in the community.
That's fair, it's not, but you're probably gonna add positions, so to me, I agree.
Well, and the reason that I say that is the 2012 bonds, I know we communicated to the residents that there would be a potential for an increase of up to 5 cents, and we increased 3.
Sounds
and
right.
We did not, that's why I'm trying to frame that.
And that's part of the language we'll need to work out, because it all depends on, obviously we're in a revow, so how far do we drop that tax rate? And in future years, does it raise? And so those are things we got to figure out.
Okay. I don't have anything else on this slide.
Uh-oh, you're wrapping up? Well, we're going to, you got your 5-year CIP, and then, so we're going to jump into the 5-year CIP to sort of show you the bigger picture and the actual five-year financial forecast. And then we also have a sheet that gets into what would we, right now, preliminary, propose as a potential bond package, what it would look like as far as numbers. So I would just, first, Patty, go to the CIP sheet. So just, we probably won't get too far in the weeds on what colors and all that unless you want to get way deep in the weeds. What I would say here is, same thing we said earlier. As far as this CIP, there should be no new road projects on there as of right now. These you have seen before. They may have moved forward, they may have moved back, just depending on whether we got some CRTPO dollars or who knows. So all of these projects, there shouldn't be any new surprises as far as these projects. The only thing, they may have slid. And what we're going to show you later on, either Patty, Jackie, I'm sure all 3 of us will be tag teaming here, is that in what we're proposing as, sort of first stab at it from maybe a bond package, et cetera, and how we fund these, is that everything in FY 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28 is funded. And I don't know if you have highlighted on this sheet, Patty, the projects in future that are,
Anything in red? Anything in red is a future bond. So we do have some items out here.
Well, in the next sheet, I'll be able to show you. There are 4 or 5 projects, and I'll just name one. Like the
Like these.
future of David Kinney Farm is not in this proposed right now to be funded. We're finishing up the design and all as a board of directors. But at this point in time, we're not showing that in the list to be finished. In any, whether it's, through fund balance or bonds, it's not in here to finish that project. Now, that's not to say that a future board may come back and say, we'd like to fund it through general funds or whatever, but we are not proposing it at this time. And there are a couple other projects that we can list those, but the main thing is I wanted to show you is that go down to the $230 million, most of that is being funded in some shape, form, or fashion. And if maybe Patty, if you want to, or Jackie, you can talk a little bit about the color coding, or this is going to show you how we're proposing, or do we just want to go to the final sheet?
I would go to the final sheet. There will be projects in here, among the 7 of you. You'll find one, I hate that project, that's just terrible, we should totally not do that one. And over the course of the next 7 to 10 years, I guarantee you there will, oh my gosh, why didn't we think of this? We should totally push this up and fund this one. So I would encourage you, when you think about a bond package, to think more about what is a number that would be palatable to you than specifically, I want that project right there. Because until we issue bonds, the project's not going to be funded anyway.
Right. Do you want to do the debt proposal or?
I think we should, yeah, we might as well go. So we showed you from the Davenport spreadsheet, the estimated impact on the tax rate if you funded some level of debt. I encourage you to think about total debt as opposed to whether it's bond. Think for a minute about bond versus installment financing. You've heard me speak passionately. If you remember nothing else I say, please remember, I would discourage you from doing a bond package for town hall because it's such an easy way. There's an easy way to finance town hall with an installment financing. Quite frankly, I feel the same way about fire station. It's easy to get financing on a fire station. I don't have decent collateral for a road. I'm not sure I have decent collateral on a greenway. It's just harder collateral. So I encourage you to use a specific type of debt, marry a specific type of debt to the collateral and how easy it is to issue and the interest rate related.
And let me just jump in on what these columns mean. So column A, if you're sort of looking down, if you were to tie this back to the actual CIP
that we distributed last Friday.
Or that you saw today, same thing, it would be where that project is on that list. So you remember I've talked about some of our future projects are proposed to be funded. Some may be in multiple years. Just look at NC 115 / McCord 73. That's CRTPO dollars tied to that. So in our spreadsheet, you'll see in 25 and 28, it has funding associated with it. So that's kind of what this column means. The blue means we're already either spending money towards that project, or it's a project in red, even though it's in blue and highlighted in red. As part of the 73 project, we're committed, the town is committed that we have to pay a portion of that for, sidewalks, et cetera, is what that number is. I don't know what that number is yet. These are all estimates. If you go down a little bit further, there's one other project, I think, in red, the Park Huntersville Greenway. Remember, we entered into agreement. We got some CRTPO funds, et cetera. Those two, we have some type of an agreement that we'll be locked in to fund those. But the blue, everything else in blue on here, are projects that we're already spending money towards.
I fought stupid hard for the zero on that spreadsheet. Stumptown Road shows 0 in bonds. I think we're going to do Stumptown. If you're going to do that, it don't. So the 5-year forecast, Patty will shows our portion paid out of fund balance. That's illogical to me. If you're going to do Stumptown, I would do that with bonds. But because it's a committed project and CRTPO wants to see we have a solid funding source and a potential future bond referendum is not a funding source, for the forecast shows it come out of fund balance. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I thought, these people are, oh, take that off, we're not funding it out of bonds. I'm like, please leave that blank on there, because we need to explain to you. If you're gonna do Stumptown, I think a more logical funding source is bonds. That's the majority, that is a significant player in how you did Main Street. I would do
What's
Stumptown
the
similarly.
estimate for the cost of the Stumptown Road extension currently?
I think maybe 15 or so.
I think it's got at least 9 million of it coming out of fund balance.
Yeah.
15 and a half?
The 15 and a half you see up here, some of that is CRTPO.
I'm sorry?
About 5 million of the
About 5
15 is
million
CRTPO funds.
CRTPO, so then 10 and a half? Okay.
That is an example of, you're gonna see a project or two up there where a couple of you are gonna say, oh my gosh, it's stupid,
And
why'd they even put that in there? Well, if you take that out and put in Stumptown, in Jackie's opinion, a smart way to look at this, remember, if Patty goes to the bottom of where the sum is, FY '24 through FY '28, look at rows 79, 80, and 81. The portion of that we're gonna need some kind of debt instrument for is that 50, 17, and 31.5.
And you're gonna see that back on the other sheet.
Yes,
If you
that's
jump-
where we got these numbers.
Yeah, so it all ties together. Go back, and I think I saw Commissioner Partee had a question before I keep going. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did. The highlighted blue, McCoy Road and Beatty's Ford Road, you said that's 1 million, 1.7, $1.1 million. You said there's money being expended towards that project. What type of money is being expended right now towards that
I'd have to-
intersection? Because I use that intersection a
Yeah,
lot.
Patty
It's
may be
very
able to tell me how much we spent to date on that project. Patty's gonna tell me right now. Yeah,
Design
much-
phase, design phase? Okay.
yeah. So that's the reason we're already spending money to those. I assume board is gonna continue down that path. We got it, Patty, it's fine.
Oh, okay, right there.
33.
So it looks like we've already, well, you've allocated.
We budgeted, and he's already spending money with design.
That's right. So move back to the other sheet. So just to get back on this now, what's in, I don't know what color you want to call this, tan, I guess, or whatever. These are projects, like I said, look to your left, you'll see what year they're in right now in the CIP. These are projects that we sort of threw in here that, like I say, there are a few projects left off the list that we thought, were projects that were worthy of moving forward. There are a couple other projects. I promise you, I don't know what that number is. I don't know. Unless it's already been bid out, I don't know what any of those numbers are. These are estimates. They typically don't go down. Most of the time they go up. So until we get bids on these things, these projects are gonna move. So, and they may be, I don't know, we may find a bunch of dead bodies at McCoy and McElwain, under the road that stops that project. And you have to think, so when we're looking at that, you gotta think there may be another project that slides into place. So if a project shuts down for whatever reason, that's why when you hear Jackie talk earlier, in your educational pieces, you list roads, you list, these are the type projects we're looking at doing. And you typically move towards those, but you leave enough, I guess, you leave enough in there so that you can move other projects in if they come up, or if you were to get a huge grant. So we want to be flexible. But this is what we're looking at now to include in that, and we can put other projects. But what I would tell you is right now, we're looking at a potential street bonds at, we'll just say 50 million. Just using round numbers. Add all those up, that's kind of where that number comes from. You heard Michael talk about, I'm not saying this is what the board's gonna approve, whether it's 50 in roads, or whether it's 17 million in parks and greenways. This is some of the projects that Michael mentioned earlier, it may not have been all of them. But these are projects to consider, that we may have pulled out of the CIP, and these were the years they were in. These are projects to consider. I have no clue whether it's gonna cost 6.5 million when we get ready to do that, when we issue that, et cetera. But this is sort of what we're saying right now, based on estimates, if the board, and how we would fund 50 million in street bonds, and we'll just say 17 million in parks, greenway bonds. And then, of course, that's a total of, we'll just say 68 million, and bond referendum would be roughly 68 million, if that's what the board chooses to do. And then if you move down further, Jackie talked about earlier, if you've got a physical asset like a house, you know, that you could use for collateral, then ultimately, we typically push towards using those projects and doing installment financing. Because you have a building, you have land, et cetera. Roads, you know, nobody wants a road. I don't want to own a road. No, but if I was a bank, okay, I don't mind owning an asset like a town hall.
You can more closely align when you get the financing with exactly when the project's ready to move.
So total, I mean, what we're showing here as actual, you remember Jackie went back to the model and we had Davenport, if you recall, it was about 95 million, I'm just rounding. So obviously there was some science to this. We looked at, I mean, they're the experts. They did all this modeling, showed you the various models. You know, we're close to it. You know, 99 versus 94, 95. There was a rhyme and reason behind how we came up with these numbers. I guess we can stop there and kind of, I know this is a lot. We're not asking you to adopt a budget, approve a bond amount today, but this is where staff is sort of have been going, and you probably want to know how do we pay for this now. That's really the key. How do we pay for this? To pay for this, what does the tax rate look like, et cetera. But this is, when we talked about cake and all that, what's in the cake, this is the big ticket stuff that's in the cake and how we're proposing to finance some of this.
90 and 100 days will come very fast, meaning if there is, so if you have to take action by May 15th, OMG, Jackie Anthony, 68 million in bonds, y'all are crazy. We're not gonna do that. Cut it in half or something. Tell us which projects to take off. Start thinking about which projects you don't want to do. Or, OMG, Jackie, 100 million only accounted for half of the projects because isn't the CIP 230 million? OMG, it's not nearly big enough. Start thinking about what number you want that to be, and let's make progress. But financial forecast is fun for me. How could we do this? So there's lots of details, spreadsheets here, which you may not want to see, but there is a forecast in here that suggests, could we fund that? This forecast suggests that voters would approve the referendums that we just suggested in this spreadsheet, and that we would issue that in what I'm gonna call 2 tranches. One would be in FY24, one would be in FY28. That's probably far quicker than you would want to issue it, but since it's a 5-year forecast, we wanted it in that last year out.
And there's a main reason why we would issue in 24 and potentially issue in 28. 28 is another reval year too, so that's the way things sort of line up. So
Patty has updated this spreadsheet, I'm sorry, I'll shut up, I promise. Patty has updated it at the FY22 column for the end of fund balance. So from this point forward, it's a forecast.
So before we kind of dive in, do you believe that those projects that you've listed currently for the bond package, are they achievable in the next 7 to 10 years?
there's built-in, are those all achievable? I would say no, some of them probably will slide off, and another one may slide in a spot. For instance, I don't know what's going to happen with, and one of the projects that I'm probably a little hesitant on is Irvin Cook. There are 3 different phases. Developer may move that one quicker than the other. So we may move a smaller project that's in the future. There are 4 or 5 projects. Now, Patty may be able to here in a minute tell me exactly what those 4 or 5 projects are. That's why I say build flexibility. There may be a project that you come up with that is the greatest thing in the world 2 years from now that really needs to be funded.
I think what I'm trying to get at is that if we're gonna ask the taxpayers to approve these bonds, then we should be able to deliver. Now, whether it's those exact projects or other road projects, to acknowledge that we're going to be delivering street improvements, infrastructure improvements in the next 7 to 10 years.
So what I would say.
And I guess let me circle that back to say in 2003, those bonds, we didn't spend $1 million
That's
of
right.
them.
So let's say a hurdle comes up, whatever, hurdle, you don't issue it. So if you're not gonna be able to deliver the project, don't issue it.
That's
I don't wanna, that may have been why you didn't issue it back then.
I think a smart way to look at it, are these worthy projects that we should work toward, and are they worthy of being funded? Yes. Kevin, when we hired you 15, 17 years ago, did you think 18 years later you'd still be working on Main Street? Delivery is a scary word for us.
Right. And you don't have to have, it. The key is here, obviously, Main Street, whatever bond you did on, I don't think you probably finished that in the it sounds like we didn't finish that in a 7 to 10 year time frame. There was multiple different pots of money involved, and that's project that's probably been going on for 20, 30 years. So what I would say here is, go down to your bottom there, Patty. I know Jackie mentioned a little while ago, this is just bond amount we're talking about, but remember in the spreadsheet, even though it's 230 million, a lot of that is funded through other revenue sources too. It could be, transportation, reserve, it could be fund balance, could be et cetera. So in that CIP from 24 to future year, there's much more than 100 million funded. There's only 4 or 5 projects out of the 230 million that's not funded. So I just want to be clear on that. It's not, there are other revenue sources in here that are funding all these projects throughout, and that's all in the weeds down here that Patty has. Is that the total, what's the total number being funded, Jack? Pat?
Through what?
All of it combined,
Oh, right here would be,
right there?
178.
Patty-
well, it depends, you'd probably do,
Patty, I would sum H 69 through M 69. Or I would stop at L probably. I would, in row
it's
6.
gonna be that number, it's gonna be the 119 plus the bonds. So you're funding 145, the only thing that's not funded is the 26 million.
So, but I'm saying if you do all the installment finances, everything, isn't that the number right there, roughly?
Yeah, but we don't have a funding source for the 26 million in future years. We don't have a funding source for this 26 million. We only
Yeah.
have a funding source for the 25, which is future referendum.
Right.
So is it fair to say it's 178 less 26, so ballpark 150?
Yes.
So if we do town hall in this, and it would be that number there. So out of the 230 million, this is what you're looking at minus that if you don't do town hall.
Plus the 230 includes the funded prior years.
That's right. All of those projects you saw, so you're getting real close to funding everything, even in the future years, is what I'm saying. I know that is a ton of stuff we threw at you, and Jackie and Patty and the Brain Trust have been working on this quite some time. Go for it.
She's pointing at me because I had a question. One of the things you showed in the previous slide, or your previous presentation about the bonds, was that if we hypothetically financed, I believe it was $98 million, roughly $100 million, that would cause a 4.5 cent increase in our tax rate, basically just to keep even.
Yes, that was Mitch's spreadsheet, and that was based on the assessed value in FY '23 before the revow.
No revow.
Right, so based on that, I got 4.5 at a 1.1 per penny valuation. I know you usually do you refer to it as 1, but I think it's actually 1,065,000 or something like that. You know the number better than I do.
At today's interest rates, I would assume that $1 million will cost you $100,000 in debt service. Was that the question?
One penny.
Our revenues are, we get,
A penny generates today ballpark $1,020,000.
oh, 1,020,000, okay, so even lower. So if it increased by 50%, and again, just putting numbers out there, that would, and I apologize for my math was 4.5 at 1.1 per penny. It would be 3.1 at 1.65 per penny. Does that sound roughly?
Can I approach it differently? If today a penny generates $1,020,000,
Yeah.
and if there's a 50% increase in value, can we all agree that it would ballpark be, that a penny would generate $1,500,000?
1,500,000. So yeah, so instead of the 4.5 cent increase, it would be, let's say, 3.25.
I understand that math, and that works. However, I have to give a disclaimer there too. We probably, based on historical precedent, I bet those cost of those projects have increased, so I doubt we get all of them for that price, but yes.
But I mean,
Yes, that-
essentially saying 100, if we did a 100 million bond, it would be, we'd have to raise taxes by 3.25 to offset that
I
cost.
feel a
for the
whole
100
lot
million
better
bond.
about getting the revow back from the county, and that doesn't account for the appeals loss, and let's have Mitch run the spreadsheet, but that sounds logical. Now,
Yep.
that is debt affordability, and that's ignoring personnel and operating cost in the budget, and those are gonna happen.
Right, so I'm just saying, but to cover the bond, period, 3.25, everything else would be additional on top of that.
True, in a vacuum, it would probably be less than 4 cents.
Yeah.
Here's where you want to be, right here.
I'm
You're
just trying to see
leading
what the
to
numbers
it,
play
Lance.
out.
This is what you're leading to.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
So all of this stuff we've talked about in the last 2 days, and obviously, we don't have everything in. We haven't, got the exact penny of how much police cars are going up, or the exact penny of what Jack's, whatever plan's gonna cost, and, all those. So we don't have all that to the T. That's why as you saw Patty's calendar, we continue to work to that and hone in on that, so we make some assumptions here. But you heard Jackie talk a little while ago about revow, and there's, you saw the sheet. We don't have anything new. It's average of 53% roughly. That's an average that she showed you a model. There's gonna be some appeals. That number's gonna change. So in this spreadsheet, we assume, well, if my little button works again, there it goes, 35% is what we assumed in the spreadsheet. And we baked in everything we've talked about and all these assumptions and bonds and installment financing and all in this one, and future years. We're, at this point, we're at a 24-cent tax rate. We would show, in this model, dropping that to 21 cents.
Jackie, are we being conservative with the growth rate? 2%
Are we being conservative with the 35?
with the growth rate?
The two.
The 2.
Oh, I think it's fair.
Okay.
When we calculate revenue neutral, we get to take credit for natural growth, and so I wouldn't tinker with that much. Yeah, I hope we're conservative. Recession, wah, who knows?
Okay.
This is sort of, we can play with, same as Jackie's other sheets, we can play with the numbers and plug whatever number you want, 35, we can play with the tax rate, as you know, obviously it shows what our tax rate has been. We make some assumptions in future years, we just laugh it alone. Well, let's face it, in 2028, when we have another revow, I don't know if it's gonna be 12%. I bet my house and car and kids it won't be, and I don't know if the rate's gonna be, but these are just making assumptions. I don't know in 2028. None of us may be
Please let me
here.
take you on a brief tour of this spreadsheet through my eyes. There are rows that I think will be more important to
Would
you
love
than
that.
others. Don't everybody care what row 50, the revow estimate is? I don't have any insider information, I'm taking a swag. Row 52 projects what a tax rate could be for the next 5 years. I think you'd be a little bit interested in row 57. 57, remember that spreadsheet where we illustrate the difference between me and Anthony? Don't be naive about row 57. Row 57 is how much additional tax revenue are we bringing in? Well, Jackie that got the 10% increase in value, whose tax bill was the same, yeah, y'all go do all those projects. That sounds great to me. But the Anthony that got a 40% increase to make the average work out to 25, on average, people are paying a tax bill that's 22% higher than it was the year before. I would think that would be a row that would be of interest to you because you're going to hear from people who are paying more. Patty, where is fund balance? Jackie and Patty going to have an awful lot to say about fund balance. Row 36, our fund balance in the audited financial statements you got this year was 59.6. Call that 60 million. I don't like it, but call it 60 million. That's total fund balance. You remember Patty's spreadsheet after lunch that illustrated to you in 3 years, the Powell bill fund balance has gone down 50% in 3 years? This is total fund balance, so you won't be using all of that. But to Jackie Patty, row 36 is pretty interesting because to do all of those projects and the impact of fund balance and making those new debt service payments, which is in row 31, fund balance would go from 60 to 33.7. Is that desirable? Probably not. Don't you hope that sales tax comes in appreciably higher than we estimated here and every other revenue too? Yes. And some of those, it's been our experience that it takes a little bit longer to accomplish a capital project. So just because we funded it in this year doesn't mean soup to nuts it was finished in that year. So I doubt you would spend at this rate, but here is a model that you could work toward. And to me, this vets Mitch's position that you could afford to issue debt if you wanted to. Now, you're gonna have to hit you're gonna have to hit taxes to do it. I don't wanna call it the rate because think about revenue neutral. People will be paying more. Your tax bill will be higher, but you'll be working on accomplishing these capital projects for that, and you'll be working on other projects too.
That's a lot to take in, but we're ready for any questions you have. And like I said, we're not going to solve this today, but it shows you that we can fund it over time.
Commissioner Kidwell.
So if we issue debt on the bonds, I'll go conservative, 67 million, not the full 99. How long do we have to pay that back?
Bonds are 20-year debt.
20-year debt? Okay.
From whenever you issue them, not when the voters approve them.
20 years, okay.
So the 2012 bonds, voters approved debt in 2012. We didn't issue them till 2020. They won't be paid off till 2040.
And that's why you see multiple issuances throughout. There's no way we're going to issue that at one time because
Right.
that
Too
makes no
much
sense.
debt.
We couldn't spend it.
Or we need to increase the personnel budget because Stephen would need more people to oversee projects.
Right. Commissioner Kovacs?
Which he probably would say he needs anyway.
Probably.
Okay, so we're talking about going down on our tax rate. Why are you shaking your head already?
I'm sorry.
Going down on our tax rate,
Yes.
but we need more money. And in a simple mathematical way, that doesn't make sense in my brain. I get that with property values going up, more will come in and vice versa. So if we were to stay, this is obviously hypothetical, if we were to stay at the 24 cents,
Plug that in, please. And carry it all the way across, please.
24 feet.
no feet.
So that tells you right there, what's important there, I would say, and Jackie would probably point out, is that number there. So on average, we would say your tax bill, based on this modeling, and that's based on the 35%, which is up there in yellow. If the average was a 35% instead of 53% reval, your tax bill will go up by 39.5% on average.
35. That means somebody's probably
You remember the
20
Anthony
and
Jackie
somebody
model?
else is 50.
Because
I
nobody,
get it. I was looking at it from the sense that if we were to stay at the tax rate we're at, would we have to
Issue as much. info.
issue, yes.
If you care, the way this model is written, we changed the tax rate, and that didn't stop funding any projects or fund additional projects. All that did was change our total amount of fund balance. So Patty, what's row 39? So instead of fund balance going down to 33, it only went down to 57.
none. And
So we play with the assumptions all day long, but so far, all we did was change one assumption, that was the tax rate.
And politically, I would say that's not palatable. I'm not a politician, but I would say that's not palatable to do that. And that's why you see, from my experience, we have said, with the tax rate, I would lower the tax rate to affect that 39.5%, because that'd be tough for some people.
Commissioner Phillips.
Do we know what Charlotte and Cornelius are kicking around yet?
And a lot of time, we start very early here doing our modeling. Obviously, we brought that, go ahead.
I just don't feel like we need to be having this conversation until we know the actual numbers from the county. Because all we're doing is playing unicorns
The
at this
problem
point.
is, you will know theirs probably about time we get down to adoption day. I mean, typically they're last minute.
I would much prefer seeing us being proactive, at least having the start of this conversation and even plugging and playing with these numbers to get us a sense of where we're going to be without waiting till the 11th hour. Because then I feel like there's a lot of pressure
And we
on
can't
this board.
wait that long if we're probably looking at bonds.
This is true too.
You know, we've got some decisions we've got to start making on that.
That's the problem is, I mean, reval is done when? April?
You should get letters in March, I think is what Brad
It's
Fowler
March.
said.
They're issuing the letters in March, decision in February was what I have the
Which gives
calendar
us a
right now.
2-month window, more or less, to get that bond ball rolling.
I invite you to think of it this way. So we put the CIP listing in your hands last Friday, and it's changed some from the budget book, not a grand amount, but it's changed a little bit. Patty showed you a calendar that suggests in 1 week from today, she asked directors what they need in their budget. That's going to be personnel, operating, and capital. If there are projects that you just, Stephen, stop working on them because we're just not going to fund that project because we're not going to do a referendum, let him know, if not today, somehow let us know so he stops putting money in his budget to work on that project. So to me, it's even before what the county might do or what the reval might be, because even if this were not a reval year, are you going to do those projects or not?
Right. And again, we kind of started this process today saying, remember, what we're doing now is looking at how we're going to invest in our community. And if there's projects that do not rise,
We were just told with the bond talks, though, to not look at individual projects, to look at it as a whole number. So now
Yeah,
it's mixed
you're right.
messaging.
Well, keep in
it's
mind,
holistic.
bonds still has to be voted on by the people.
Correct.
So this is playing unicorns. Because we can throw all this out there and talk about it, but the voters have the final say.
That's right. And if they don't pass, then obviously we got to rework our sheets here and et cetera to push what we need to push ahead. Some that, the ones that we're already committed to, especially if we got an agreement, those will move ahead. The ones that we've probably spent a lot of money towards, I would assume the board would say maybe we need to carry those forward, but those are decisions you would have to make.
Anthony, there've been several surveys done in the past, asking our residents what they feel the needs are within our community, right? With the 2040 community plan, I know there was a survey in there, amongst others. Do you feel that the bond packages reflect
I mean,
those needs?
roads is, you know, probably everybody has roads is key. Obviously, police, fire, those kind of things, public safety, you know, those are small numbers compared to, you know, some of
Correct.
these. But, I mean, those are your top greenways, parks, I mean, just typical stuff you see.
And I,
Remember the sheet earlier that Steve and I told you to pay attention to was, whatever colors, maybe it was a pink and a purple. Those road projects are spread everywhere.
Right.
Sidewalk projects, all that are spread across town. The key, if you're gonna do any type of bond, is to have something in all sectors of town. And if you look at those maps, they're, I don't know how many blocks on there, they're all over town. So there is no where you're catering to just the south or just the north or the east or west. They're spread out everywhere. So that's key when you try to do, especially road projects or greenway projects or whatever you may be doing, is to have something for everybody.
right. Commissioner Booth.
Thank you. Anthony, could you go back to the breakout sheet that shows the bond breakout for roads and
Yes.
parks?
Yeah, that one there has,
Yeah, if you just scroll up, a couple of quick questions is that, everything that you have future, why didn't you put a year there?
because, go back to your, so let's pick a project first.
Literally right here after 28.
Okay, then why are we putting that money into the bond package?
because we're looking, you gotta remember, a bond package, 7 to potentially 10 years. And the CIP is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and everything else in the CIP is shoved into a future year.
Then I just bring up Stumptown Road, which we've been talking about for 20 years, and it's been on this sheet.
So I don't know how long it's been on your sheet per se. I know since I've been here. So on Stumptown, if you look on the, back at the other sheet, it probably, where's Stumptown on this one? I'm sorry. I'm looking sideways. So you've already allocated some money in prior years, and then if you look back at the other sheet, you'll see what years they're in, projected to be built, et cetera. That's where those numbers tie into.
No, I was using that as an example, is that we've had Row 32, Stumptown Extension on there for at least 15 years.
But you may have never had it tied into bonds.
Right, so now we're tying some stuff into bonds that we really don't know when we're gonna get to it, just sometime in this bond period.
And this is what we're projecting right now, what we know at this point in time. It's just like a lot of these other, like I will tell you, these estimates we have up here, there's not, until it is bid and we get a piece of paper in our hand saying what it is, none of these numbers are right.
Are you saying, Commissioner, that, that those numbers, some of those numbers for Stumptown should be on the bonds?
No, I'm not talking about Stumptown, I was using that as an example.
Oh, okay.
Of something being on our presentation sheet for the last 15 years. If you go back to the previous slide, you could, where it says roads and streets for the bond package, could you flip?
Oh, this one right here, debt proposal?
Right, it just seems like everything in the future, you know, that would be nice to have a year there, to me. It just seems like these things could be here on the next bond package.
I'm sure there are budgets in my office that talk about Stumptown. I know it goes back to 2014, it might go back to 2010 or 11. However, I don't think any portion of it was funded, but now a portion of it's funded. So I would say that lends credence to some portion of it is moving forward.
Well, because none of it was funded in the 2020 bonds.
So typically it stays in that future year and never gets funded. And the reason it never does is, you know, we in the past, I guess boards typically do a bond every 10 years. So unless that project moves up in that earlier years, it never gets funding. So Stumptown at some point in time, if it was back in 2014 or 2010, at some point in time, boards decided to move forward their project. We started spending money, because if you go back to that category, we started as probably about 1.5 million. Where is it at? Right here. So we've already allocated 1 point, whatever it is, 4 million or so, and we've already actually, those are, we spent money already on that project. So at some point in time, boards move that project forward, we spent money on it. So that project, the reason it's in that bond package and it's blue is we've already spent money on it, so some board has decided to move forward with that project.
But you haven't spent money on the things that say future.
That's exactly right. And that's why it has stayed over here for so long. We never had a funding source, or we couldn't fund it out there. With the bond, it allows you to look past those 4 or 5 years. Now, if the board says, we don't want to do anything in the future, then we would cut those out of the bond and not fund those. I mean, that's a, choice. So if you went back and said, you know what, Aunt, I don't want to do anything in these tan categories, then you don't do that. But if you're going out to look 7 to 10 years, the CIP only goes for those 4 or 5 years. You gotta, you need to think further out than 4 years or 5 years.
And I would say, worst case scenario, that gives you additional funds for the overages on the projects that you did fund.
And then if let's just say you go for voter approval, it looks like every 9 to 10 years is what we've been doing. And there's a reason for that. But if for whatever reason that you're gonna see in the issue, we're not gonna issue those right away. We're not ready for those. These projects we've spent money on, we've spent time on, we've engineered, we've designed. So we're ready to spend money on those. These projects that were out in the future year, Stephen hadn't lifted a pencil up except for to give you an estimate. So until we're ready, the board is ready to move those forward. That's why in the bond package, you see multiple issuances.
Right,
So in your
because you don't
20
spend any, you don't pay any interest until you sell the bonds.
So in 20, how many issuances did you do for the 2012?
Gosh, we would have done 13 and 16 and 20.
So you did 3
Three.
issuances for that. How much did you do in 2012? Total dollars?
30 million.
So for $30 million, the board, because we're not ready for those projects. We're not ready, to start paying interest on those projects until we're ready to start building them. You issued it over time. So the same thing here, and I'm sure Patty and Jack, we estimate when we would issue for those projects. And those projects that in the future year, it's likely going to be issued, a future board would issue those to start those projects in an outer year.
Because you've got 10 years with an extension, 10 years includes the extension, to actually issue the bonds. So in this model, Jackie and I just split it 50-50. But technically, it could be way out here when you issue them, if you don't need that money. So when you issue the bond, when you sell the bonds, they're just kind of sitting in a kitty. That money's just kind of there like a home equity.
I
Yeah.
get that, I get
Yeah.
that. It's just, Anthony, what you're telling me is that Oliver Hager will start construction in 10 years.
I'm not saying it's going to start in 10 years. We have it in the future year right now. That's for a board to decide let's say development moves out there real quick. There's a subdivision going on out there, I think the board approved. If that piece moves up, quick, and the board decides they want to do sooner rather than later on that, that's something we have to decide on, whether you move that up into one of those, whether it's in 8 years from now, 4 years from now, that's something you have to decide. All you're getting from the board is approval for, the amount of money to do road projects, and here's a laundry list of projects that the board is considering to spend their money toward. When you issue for those particular projects is going to determine, whether you issue for this project, whatever, you'll have to decide that and how fast you move along that project. Just like at some point in time, we decided on these in blue, we spent money on those projects. At some point in time, you're going to decide, I would assume, to move forward with these projects.
This is, for me, an incredibly fun exercise. However, I think it's smart for us to think of, don't let Jackie overwhelm you with numbers and rows and columns and stuff. So let me send you a copy if you want it, separate of this presentation, of Mitch's spreadsheet. Here's what he estimates the tax impact to be if you issue $243 million or $94.8 million or $57 million or whatever the other number was, and start soul searching over that CIP list and say, you know what, y'all crazy. We don't need to issue 94 million. We don't need to issue 50 million in streets, and we don't need to issue 17 million in parks. I want to pick off these projects. Or, you know what, shoot, it wasn't high enough. Take the 50 million and make it 75, make the 17 in parks 12, or 20, or whatever number. Help us figure out what information you need to make an informed decision on what size referendum to put together.
Commissioner Kidwell.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back just a hair. Mecklenburg County offers a discounted tax rate for income and disability. And I brought it up to this board, I think last year, about doing something similar for the town, for some of our residents, our lower income residents, our residents with disability.
Veterans,
Veterans. What would that do? Or do we have that data? That maybe Mecklenburg County is already, we got people already utilizing them in Mecklenburg County. What would that do if we offered something like that to our residents here? Just to throw something out.
I don't want to speak.
Clarification, is that project or that program through the state that they offer?
I think it's through Mecklenburg
Or is
County.
it, that would be my question.
I don't know as much about how the veterans exemption or disability exemption works, but my understanding with the elderly exemption, they exempt a value, the county would exempt a value, and when the county exempts a value, that impacts us as well. So that may well already be going on here. Don't quote me on that for elderly exemption, but not the other two. We'd be more than happy to get additional information for you.
So circling back to the bond referendum, Commissioner Phillips.
Oh, no, I was telling Rob 1 minute, because
She's
it
on-
was in our county presentation.
I thought.
Yeah.
I heard something.
Well, the county gives veterans a discount, but they also do it for lower income, and they also do it for disability.
You're saying on
But
our
Rob,
end of
he
the
said
tax
it had-
rate?
That comes from the state, he said, not the county.
That's what I thought he
Yeah, the
said.
veterans is just, disabled
the state.
veterans is,
State.
state, because it must,
But-
yeah.
A low income and disability is,
Elderly and disabled requirements. This, I believe this one is a county one.
So we
so
would,
are we extending, my question is, if it's happening through the county, are we
extend it to
Are we
them?
extending it to them as well?
We'll follow up with the county and get you that information. I can't, I don't know.
Yes.
Hey, go back to the CIPD and go to, I don't think I see Mount Holly, Huntsville, handwrite on the bond sheet. Just give you an example.
Right here.
Handwrite Mount Holly
So it's in a future year. That project is not listed. You may say, God, we got some calls on that project, schools out there, people having problems. You remember Stephen saying there's 4 or 5 different private projects? 3 and another one in the pipeline, and the Cats parking ride, where through that TIAs, there are a lot of improvements proposed for the intersection. So this was a particular project that the reason it's out in the future years, like, well, why is the town maybe gonna pick up their project if 4 different potential entities have turning lanes at that intersection going on? So at this point in time, we did not put that in the so-called bond package to be funded. That's a project that we said that didn't make it into the cut, because if these various entities, through approvals that you have approved through the TIA, have to do a bunch of turning lanes out there, that project didn't make the cut. Now, so let's just say those 4 projects folded and they didn't move forward. Obviously, there's a lot of dirt being turned out there, so some of them are. That may be one that, didn't make the list, that you may say, all of a sudden that moves up on the list. I just use that as an example of some of the rhyme and reason behind some of these projects that may make it or may not.
Are there any other questions from the board on this topic?
There is, but I don't want to ask Jackie another question because she'll bite my head off. But I think we've got too much money in our fund balance. And I know that's a sacred cow for you. But Hunters Hill's got one of the biggest checkbooks in the state. And I think we should start using some of our fund balance.
We want, yeah.
You're gonna kill the fund balance based on what you see
yes.
here.
Bobby, how you pull up the spreadsheet I emailed you today? Will you pull it up? Will you pull up the spreadsheet I emailed you today? No, really, we should vet this. There are other entities who have come up disproportionate to us because the state calculates available fund balance as a percentage of your expenditures, and you're spending more. So yours is declining. You may never see fund balance through my eyes, and I doubt you do, but I want you to just see what I see and tell me if you feel differently. You should know why I feel how I feel about it, right? Bobby's working on it. I love this spreadsheet. Anthony glosses over. Anthony's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that at all. But you should, let's vet it. And I'll make it fast, I promise. It's not going,
Oh, it's coming.
oh, do you want me to display? I think I got it pulled up on my PC. You want to display my PC?
So, quick question, while you're pulling that up, can we take a 5-minute? Let's take a 5-minute.
Gives me a chance to run.
Oh, no, you're not running. I'm gonna block the doors.
emailed you a copy of our financial statements. Our financial statements say our fund balance is 59,672, 263. Amongst us friends, let's call that 60 million. When I see that 60 million sounds like a lot, probably is. Rows 7 through 12, let's talk about that a minute. 181,000 of that is already spent out of next year's money. So that's not available to be spent. Small number on that page, let's don't spend a ton of time on it. POW bill, Kevin talked to you about that. Our POW bill fund balance has been over 3 million before today. Right now, it's 1.5. Big thing I want you to know about POW bill, that's not available for just any purpose you might choose to spend it on. It must be spent for a POW bill eligible purpose. Resurfacing is an example of one of those, ice and snow removal. There are other things. Speaking for Kevin, won't that be a good time for me? Very comfortable for him. He does not want you to use that money to build a new road. It's not wise. It's not okay, I'm moving on. Escrows. So a perfect example of the escrow to me is when 7-Eleven was being put in. And we said, it is pointless for you to put in the sidewalk improvement because we're going to be doing construction in that area. The engineer's estimate is that the road construction is going to cost X amount. Give that to us and we'll include it in our project. That's how money becomes escrows. That escrow money thereby then is not available for you to go out and build town hall with it or to pay the power bill at Discovery Place Kids. We're holding that to be spent for a specific reason. So that's not available to be spent on just anything either. Tourism fund balance sounds like it's gotten really high, hasn't it? We have committed portions of the POW bill to do some of the Greenway things, so we're rolling some of those projects over from one year to the next. And tourism dollars must be spent for a purpose that generates additional tourism dollars. So you can't just go out and build town hall with that either. Stormwater, same deal. Stormwater fees generated some stormwater fund balance. We have begun to spend some of that down on stormwater-related projects. So the stormwater fund balance is not available to be spent on town hall, or I suppose theoretically you could spend it on building the stormwater portion of a road project. Kevin's probably going to wince if you do that too. Emergency services is in a prior year's budget. We said we were going to allocate X number of dollars to the fire department. We did not give them all those funds, so we're holding those for a fire-related purpose. So all of those sum together, so call it 60 million. 60 million is already down to 50 million. So there's not as much as 50 million is less than 60 million, right? Okay. When we adopted the original FY23 budget, we funded some capital projects. When Jackie describes it, the capital projects that you funded out of this year's budget summed to $7.6 million. So 50's down to 41. We just use a third of it. It's gone and we don't even realize it. Yes, sir.
What does the state ask us to hold in fund balance? What are we required to have in our fund balance?
There is no state law that says it's 8%. There is no requirement that it be 8%. 8% is a philosophy that you should hold at least the equivalent of 1 month's expenditures in fund balance. If you take 12 months, 1/12 of the year, basically 8%. So they're telling you, when the year ends at June 30, you need to at least be able to pay July's expenditures. Okay? All those projects what we just talked about in FY23, in FY22 and in FY21 and in FY20 and possibly before that, there are some projects that you did not finish. When you did not finish them, we rolled over the authority to finish that project into this year's budget. You will see several projects both on the 23 list and on the prior year's list. I didn't sum this because I didn't know I didn't sum this by project. You probably don't care what year it was funded in. You just care whether or not you funded the project, and you obviously care you funded the project because you funded it. If you sum all of those, that's another 9.5. So far we've cut fund balance in half. So having a fund balance of 31 million sounds a whole lot different than having a fund balance of 60 million. You've done a budget amendment so far this year to fund 3 million in fund balance to work on town hall. We asked you to do a reimbursement resolution, you did one. In a world where Jackie gets everything she wants, we will do a debt issue that will include paying ourselves back. So we'll issue an installment financing that would pay for all of town hall, including the portion that we spent so far, so that we can restore that in fund balance. But temporarily, at least temporarily, 3 million of that's gone. I think you'll do another 900,000 one in the month of February for Siegel, Romacher. There are some things you funded that are not capital in nature. So when I'm trying to tie back to the June 30, 22 financial statements, there are projects we rolled over in this year that are not necessarily capital in nature. We owed money on the downtown plan. Certainly our vendor would like to know that we rolled our authority to pay those bills over into this year. That's the list of projects that are not necessarily capital in nature. All those projects sum to 24. Fund balance of that awesome $60 million is down to 26 million. I would argue that that's probably as detailed as you need to get, reserved by state statute. The state of in the private sector, quick ratio, you need more cash. You need enough cash at year end to be able to pay your accounts payable, those, the power bill and your employees, those short-term debts that you will owe, just if you take a snapshot in time. The state of North Carolina tells us how to calculate that, and they're saying this is the portion of your fund balance that you need to set back and hold on to make sure you can pay your bills between July 1 and call it December when tax bills start rolling in. So honestly, I would argue we probably got 26 maybe that's usable, but the state would tell you, no you don't, because 15 of that you have to set aside. This board, with the adoption of previous budgets, has set aside $2 million that they said they'll never use for anything except making future debt service payments. Theoretically, you could make your FY24 debt service payments with that $2 million. But if you take those two out, that whopping amount of $60 million that we're sitting on is $8 million.
And that's not even doing our 40%.
The 40%'s gone. I mean, the argument about whether we should set aside 40% or 45%, it's over, because you only got 8 million, which is nowhere near 40 or 45, so it's irrelevant. Now, these projects are not being spent in 1 year, and some of them, I'm gonna tell you honestly, have rolled over multiple years, so at what rate am I gonna spend this money? I got no idea. But when you talk about, oh my gosh, we've got, we should totally do fund balance we should totally do town hall at a fund balance, that's why I say, oh no, you shouldn't. It's not there available for you to do that with. I got nothing else.
Is that the question you want me to ask you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's why,
$60 million sounds like a lot of money. It's 8.5.
So what you're saying is there's a chance.
Spend it intentionally, knowing that you intended to spend it, but when you look at the ratio of what we look like compared to other people, we don't know what this looks like for them.
Right.
$60 million sounds like a lot, it's not.
yeah, I mean, you can look at the 5-year financial forecast, and like I say, what is bought time is projects takes a little bit longer. And the board in the last few years have really pushed get projects going instead of talking about it. And we are spending money, and it's coming.
And that's the thing, we've known it's coming.
Stephen says 8.5 is woefully low. He's worried. My CARTPO, my CRTPO, most of my grant projects are on a reimbursement basis, so I got to pay up front, and DOT reimburses me whenever they feel like it. So Stephen says 8.5 is woefully low. He's scared now. He said, oh my gosh, we can't apply for all these grant projects because Jackie don't have enough cash to pay for them.
That's the reason we're talking about a bond referendum.
You gotta, if we're not gonna at least move forward with the bond, I mean, you gotta shut the projects down. I mean, just take town hall alone. I mean, you've got to do something. You can't take, let's just say 30 million, it's just a nice round number. Even if we had 60 million, you shut everything down and made it real simple. 60 goes to 30 real quick, and that didn't include any of the stuff Jackie talked about. You have to, if you're gonna move those projects, look at a way to finance. That just makes sense. Just same thing with, unless you could pay cash for your house, I couldn't. You gotta look at the best rate you can get and, do an installment financing.
Thank you for falling into my web of getting to show you a spreadsheet. I think that bores Anthony. Thank you.
You just made it,
I was so
you
happy when I
made
did that
her
spreadsheet. It's
weekend.
like,
You made her weekend.
I'm gonna learn one of these days.
Where's my hard copy?
All right. Any additional discussion? All right, so anything else, Mr. Roberts?
I mean, this is the stuff we'll be bringing forward to you, and we'll be fine tuning the numbers as we, as best we can as we move forward. But, I mean, you've got a pretty good, analysis of what we would recommend at this point in time. But as we move through this process, we need to hear feedback from you, and, eventually we gotta make some very, very tough decisions.
All right, so unless there's anything else, we'll move on to the next topic, which is discuss advisory boards. Mr. Roberts? Did I miss something?
No, I wanted to advocate for fellow Commissioner Bidwell. He's gonna have to leave. This was his item. I don't
Yeah.
feel like we should have a discussion if he's not here.
Yeah, and
Could we make that a pre-meeting or an agenda item to discuss? Because he needs to be here because it's his topic.
yeah, and I don't wanna drop a bomb on you guys and walk out.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't. No, I wanna have a real in-depth conversation about it. I mean, it's, and when we get to that point, it's objective. It's not personal.
So let me ask this, you said you had to leave at what, 2:45?
Yeah, I've gotta go pick up my daughter.
And were you anticipating coming back?
I was.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss?
There were two items, on the advisory, but there were two advisory boards. You remember ARB, which we can just, if, okay, we can talk about that. Architectural Review Board, Review Committee,
Okay.
that Commissioner Partier brought up, and we said we would be prepared to talk about that. But up to the board, we can talk about that at a later date, entirely up to y'all.
I'm perfectly fine, and if you all are, to move this to a pre-meeting, unless, right. Are we good with moving this to a future pre-meeting?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to take away from them, but I think if we're gonna do the conversation, let's do them all in one big whoop and make sure that it's getting the dedicated time to both subjects.
I concur with that.
And I appreciate the board on that.
When is the next opening pre-meeting slot? Do we have an idea?
July 7th.
Trying to think, what's
We
the,
have Laura's HR presentation slated for the first meeting in February, so we can either do that, second
we
meeting in
could add
February.
that to
or-
it. Hers shouldn't take, 45 minutes, I wouldn't think.
Can we just make it an agenda item?
We
The
can,
agenda item would require action.
Yeah.
And
I wanna have a
Oh,
discussion.
yeah, that's true.
So how about we do this? How about we circle back, look at the calendar, work with Janet and pick a date, whether it's in February or in March, and add it to the agenda then. But I don't want to kick it out to July 7th.
I was kidding.
I know you were, and I was teasing back. All right. If there's nothing else, then we will go ahead and adjourn.
I would just like to say thank you, Anthony, and to your staff, and to Catherine for the meals and for the support for everybody that's had behind back here, and I want to just say thank you.
You're here.
Absolutely.
I want to say thank you too, not only to the board, but staff. They did all this. I'm just a figurehead sitting up here. They're the brain trust
We know.
behind all this, you know that.
You're aware. All right, is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
However you wanna put that.
Thank you all for all the hard work for the last 2 days. It's been great